Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Next one is ROM. Read-only memory. Means what are the data and instructions in the ROM chip? We cannot change it. It's only for reading purpose. So whenever ROM manufacturing time only, so they put a data and instructions. So permanent memory. Unlike your hard disk or a pen drive, so we are changing data. So the data can be changeable, but in ROM chip, you can't change the data. In ROM, we have a different models. PROM, programmable read-only memory, erasable programmable read-only memory, electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. This EPROM actually rewritable type means we can put instructions and data, we can erase it. Again, we can put a instructions and data. That is EPROM chip. So generally we use this EPROM chip something. Again, this ROM chip is fixed chip on motherboard. Okay. This ROM contains a program called BIOS, Basic Input Output System. The BIOS is a firmware. Okay? BIOS is a firmware. It is a simple program, helps your system to boot. This is very important, guys. Again, what is BIOS? Or what is BIOS chip? What is BIOS? Is the most commonly asked question. Okay. So, in ROM chip, there is a program called a BIOS. The BIOS is a firmware. What is a BIOS? Is a firmware. Firmware. Okay. BIOS is a firmware. Firmware. Anybody can use. Not firmware. Okay. Firmware. BIOS is a firmware. So BIOS is a program which is inside out your ROM chip. The BIOS is a firmware. BIOS, basic input output system. BIOS, basic input output system. What is the purpose of BIOS? BIOS helps our system to boot. When you power on your system, BIOS helps your system to boot. Okay. When you power on your system perform post operation. System perform post power on self test. So your BIOS helps to perform this post for your computer. Okay. What is post power on self test? So BIOS help our system to boot. BIOS helps our system to perform post power on self test. BIOS recognized hardware devices. So on your motherboard, what are the devices are connected? It will recognize the devices. What CPU is connected? What CPU is inserted? What RAM is inserted? How many RAMs are inserted? Which slot it is inserted? What is that RAM details? Okay. What is the RAM details? What hard disk is connected? What CD-ROM is connected? So what are their details? Where it is connected? What is their capacity? What is their ID number? Okay. So it will recognize hardware devices. And BIOS also helps give you a bootloader information. Like it locate and load operating system. BIOS will help you to locate an operating system devices and load operating system also. And BIOS contains hardware information, so it helps your operating system to access that hardware devices. BIOS has a hardware information, so BIOS helps our operating system to access hardware devices. So this is what is BIOS. Okay. What is BIOS? Basic input output system. BIOS is a firmware. It is a program which is inside our ROM chip. BIOS helps our system to boot. BIOS helps our system to perform post, power on, self-test. BIOS recognize hardware devices. BIOS helps our system to locate and load operating system. BIOS helps our operating system to access hardware devices. Okay, these are the main point. How many points from starting you can tell, like first 3 points good, 4 points good, you can practice. Okay, see that is a BIOS chip, that is AMI BIOS, American Megatrend Inc. BIOS. So BIOS chip is look like this one. Okay, not exactly always, depends upon the motherboard manufacturer, depends upon your BIOS manufacturer also. The BIOS is already I said it's a firmware, but there is one more that is called UEFI. Nowadays, you purchase any desktop, laptop, servers. On motherboard, we do not have a BIOS chip, we have a UEFI chip. What is this UEFI? Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. EFI, UEFI, both are same. UEFI, EFI, both are same. This UEFI or EFI is newer version of our BIOS. In very old system, we have a BIOS, and very new system, we have UEFI. In between means from old to new transformation, we have two options. Same chip with the BIOS firmware as well as UEFI, depends upon what OS you are going to install in that system. We are installing old operating system like Windows 7. It's a BIOS, it is must be enabled. If you are installing Windows 8, then Windows 10, like it is UEFI, you can set up. Okay, UEFI has to be selected in the BIOS options. Okay, BIOS, next version is UEFI. That's it. In old system, we have a BIOS, new system, we have UEFI. Of course, UEFI chip is also providing other benefits like a GPT partition table, what we say, secure boot options. Okay, so this kind of features it is supporting, but we'll see that one separate if possible. BIOS or UEFI. Different manufacturers are there. AMI BIOS, American Megatrend Inc. INC Inc. BIOS chip, Advert BIOS, Phoenix BIOS, Dell BIOS, HP BIOS. So different BIOS chip manufacturers are there. Okay. BIOS chip is manufactured by different company and motherboard may be manufactured with a different company. So on Intel motherboard, Intel manufacturing that Intel motherboard, the BIOS chip can be AMI BIOS or Phoenix BIOS. Okay. So it depends on the motherboard manufacturer. You choose either they will manufacture BIOS chip or another one. Okay. What I said? BIOS contains hardware information. It recognizes the hardware devices. It also contains hardware information, means it contains hardware information. Okay, it contains hardware related settings also. Actually, your BIOS, in the BIOS chip, it runs clock, date and time, run in the BIOS chip only. Okay, so you want to see that hardware information, or you want to check the date and time, or you want to change the date and time. Okay, or you want to change some hardware related configuration, or you want to secure that information from unauthorized access. You should go to the BIOS settings or BIOS setup. Okay, you have to go to BIOS settings or BIOS setup. What is BIOS setting or BIOS setup? So BIOS setting or BIOS setup to interact with your BIOS configuration, your hardware related configuration, date and time, securing your BIOS from unauthorized access. You can change some hardware related configuration. You can enable, disable hardware features. You can change certain settings. Okay, in the policy. like a number of cores per processors. So your BIOS you can enable. If you want to enable all 4 cores should be run in the processor, or a USB port should be disabled, or a SATA means a hard disk port has to be disabled or enabled. Like that we can do it. Okay. So that is how can we do it? By going to BIOS settings. So why should we go to BIOS setting? To check the hardware information, to check the date and time. Okay, to check the date and time, to set the password for your BIOS. So then no unauthorized access can access your BIOS setting or change your BIOS settings. This password is belongs to BIOS password only, not belongs to operating system. You log into your laptop, that is OS password, not BIOS password. Okay, we can change our hardware settings. We can enable, disable certain hardware features. We can change the boot priority. We can change the boot priority. We can check and change their boot priority. Once you have done the settings, you can save and exit from the BIOS to boot in the normal system. To go to the BIOS settings, you have to press a BIOS key when you power on the system. You press the power button, immediately press the BIOS key. Or while system is rebooting. While system is rebooting, press the BIOS key. Press the power button and press the BIOS key. What is your system BIOS key? Okay. In certain system, Dell is your BIOS setting. Dell. Delete button. Delete button. Press the delete button, then you can go to BIOS settings. And another one is F2. In some system, F2 is a BIOS key. It depends upon the system. It can be other than these two options, like F10 or F11 or F9 or F12. Like it can be any other option possible. But mostly delete button or F2 button depends upon your system. When you power on your system, sometimes on the system screen at the powering on time, on the screen, it will shows. So you have to set up or delete to set up either any corner. It's either top of a system or bottom or left side or right side, or left side corner, right side corner, bottom corner, top corner. Any place it can be shown depends upon the system. If you look at sharply, then you can understand what is your BIOS key. Okay, if you're much sharper, then press the BIOS key. So then you can go to the BIOS setup. So setup part, it is showing that you have to setup. Look at this. This is F2 setup. F12 is boot type option for this system. Some system it is. Okay. So it will show. So when you power on the system, press the BIOS key to BIOS setup or BIOS settings. Most possible it is delete button or F2. Or check with your system. What is your manufacturer, their model? Search in the Google. You can find the BIOS key. Or on the screen, when you power on the scene, sometimes it will shows on the screen, depends upon internal BIOS configuration. It shows the BIOS key. Press the BIOS key. If it is asking for a password, then you have to enter the password, BIOS password, if you know it. If you don't know, then you can't do access. If no password is set up, then you can directly enter. Guys, this BIOS setup screen, it is I took it from the Google and connected, right? My point is the BIOS setup is not always looks same. Options are same, information is same. Okay, the way it's a menu is different. The menu type is different. Like yesterday one, yesterday, day before yesterday, I said no, I check the one server. Okay, I connected a server. I check. I want to check what is their CPU configuration, RAM configuration, disk configuration. because that system does not have any OS. So before installing OS, is supporting my OS or not, I want to check it. So I connected to the system. I went to the BIOS. I press F2 for that one. So I press the F2, enter into the BIOS setting. There I have seen what is that processor. Okay. And RAM. How many RAMs are there? Okay. Total RAM memory. How many processors are there? Processor information, hard disk information, how many disks are connected, how many are working, enable, disable those things. Okay. I check that all information, then everything is, I write down that information in a paper and verify in the Google that processor support my OS, that is called Proximus OS, virtualization OS it is, hypervisor. So it's compatible. So then we install the OS in that machine. Okay. So knowing your system configuration is, you can go to the BIOS setting. So then you can understand what is your system configuration. Means your laptop or desktop or server configuration. You can get it from your system. Even it is very useful for troubleshooting also. Look at the screen, date and time. So this date and time, we can set it. So your BIOS runs the date and time. Even, okay, in your BIOS chip, date and time runs. You want to change the date and time according to your current date and time. You want to change it, you can change the date and time also. Also look at other information. CPU. It is i7-4500U model, means fourth generation i7 processor. 1.8 gigahertz processor it is. 4 MB cache memory, 4096 KB means 4 MB L3 cache memory. Fixed hard disk, 1000 GB fixed hard disk, around 1 terabyte. And there is a DVD writer, 8 GB RAM, 1600 megahertz. RAM clock speed is 1600, means it's DDR3 8 GB RAM. It is DDR3 8 GB RAM. i7 fourth generation processor with a 4 MB cache memory. 1 terabyte of disk or 1000 GB hard disk is there. WDC, Western Digital Hard Disk is inserted. It's a product name, BIOS version is A07. Product name is Inspiron. So just for one, different BIOS chips having different interfaces. Okay, this is some company, some system, their BIOS interface and their details. Okay, this is another one. Look at here, Phoenix BIOS. I went to the different options. See, main, advanced, security, like that. So I'm in advanced mode. See, that's Intel virtualization technology enabled. Maybe it is showing disable. I can change it to disable to enable or enable to disable. Certain hardware related features, we can enable it, disable it. We can change their ID also. It is showing set max CPU ID is 3. It is disabled, means no setup. I can change it to 1, 2, 3 max. Okay. So we can change your hardware related configurations. Next, you can set up a password. Two password, user password, supervisor password. Okay. When you are entering into the BIOS setting, if you enter supervisor password, if you know the supervisor password, you enter the supervisor password. So you can change the BIOS settings. You can view the settings. You can change the settings if you are enter supervisor password. If you enter a user password, you can view the settings. That's it. You can't change the settings. Okay. So why should we give this password? To protect from unauthorized access to access your BIOS settings. Next, this is boot priority. When you power on the system, okay, after post operation completed, power on self-test completed, your BIOS also gives boot priority list. So this is, for example, this is the boot priority list, for example. What our system will do it, first it will check the priority wise. The first one is CD RAM, CD drive. So is any in the CD RAM or DVD RAM, DVD writer, okay? In CD or DVD, any bootable CD or bootable DVD is inserted, means OS content CD or OS content DVD is inserted. If it is there, load the OS from that CD or DVD. Not available in CD, ROM, nothing is inserted, or maybe something, some CD is inserted, but that is not a bootable one, means not a OS content one. Then what your system will do? It check from the removable device, means your pen drive. If you connect a pen drive with an operating system pen drive, then it load OS from that pen drive. No, then it will go for next one. Check from the hard disk. If hard disk contains the OS, then load the OS from the hard disk. If hard disk is not having OS, then it check for OS from the network. Through network, any bootable files are available through network. Network-wise OS loading or installation is available. You try to find the OS from the network. Okay, it load the OS from the network. That is also not available, it throw you error. It will throw you error, remember that. Okay, this boot order also we can change. Most of the cases, OS in the hard disk only. Mostly our operating system in the hard disk only, not in the CD-ROM. When you are installing, then you have to change the boot priority. But generally, instead of searching one by one, you can make a hard disk as a high priority. You can make hard disk to the top. Then put a removable device, then CD-ROM, then network. Like that also you can change it. Change your boot priority as per your requirement. You are installing OS from the CD-ROM, put CD-ROM as a top priority. Okay. You are installing OS from the removable device, put the removable device as a top priority. It's a boot priority order. Okay. So once you have done, you can save and exit the settings. Once you are done any changes, you have to save and exit. So these are the boot means BIOS settings. You can check your hardware information. You can change date and time. You can change hardware related settings, enable, disable certain hardware features, or you can change some hardware related settings. Okay. You can set the password, user or supervisor password to protect from unauthorized accesses. You can change the boot priority also. Not only that, there are so many other options, depends upon your parts. In some BIOS chips, not allow mouse. Some BIOS chips allow the mouse. It will recognize the mouse and also it will allow the mouse controlling also. Some are full GUI mode it will provide. Some are only keyboard, space and left arrow, right arrow, enter button. This kind of access only we can do it. No mouse support in a certain BIOS chips. Depends upon BIOS manufacturer. They put this information. Okay. Guys, understand BIOS chip? Next, CMOS battery. What is CMOS battery? We'll see. Already I said, in your BIOS chip, BIOS contains information is permanent data. Whenever the manufacturer put, what is actually data in your BIOS chip is, while manufacturing time, that entire motherboard related information. So on board, on motherboard chipsets information, okay, and other few reading information means when you power on the system, your BIOS chip gather all the hardware connecting information, what CPU is inserted, what RAM is inserted, what hard disk is inserted. It gather hardware information also. What NIC is connected, what is graphic card is inserted. Like that, it will gather that information. Default, it contains some information. Later, it will gather information also. Okay. Default, the factory default information is always same. But newly data is temporary. Okay. Again, the BIOS runs date and time. So while system is running, BIOS also getting power supply. BIOS chip is also getting power supply. So it can run date and time. To turn off the system means no power supply. The BIOS cannot run date and time. Next. You change certain settings, right? From empty password to you are assigned a password to your BIOS. And you change certain BIOS settings, configurations, hardware related configurations. You enable, disable some BIOS features, hardware features, right? You change the boot priorities from the default boot priority, you change the boot priorities. These changes are temporary. Okay, these are all temporary. So when you power off the system in the BIOS shape, all these settings will be removed because it's all temporary. Your date and time won't run. It will be set to the factory default date and time. What are the settings you have changed? Like you said, the password, or you change some hardware related configurations. You change the BIOS boot priorities. Okay, from the default. That again reset to the factory default only when you shut down the system. How to prevent it? We put a battery. This battery is lithium battery, 3 volts lithium battery. This 3 volts lithium battery continuously give power supply to your BIOS chip. Even you shut down the system, the BIOS chip is still getting the power supply from battery. Even you shut down the system, completely power off. The BIOS chip continuously getting power supply from this battery, lithium battery. This battery we can also call as BIOS battery or CMOS battery. And again, some people take mistaken. CMOS battery, we call it as CMOS battery out of hobby. That's it. Some people think the battery is made up of CMOS technology. No, guys, CMOS is a transistor technology. Battery is a lithium battery. So it's a different component. Battery purpose is to store the power and deliver the power, right? You use a battery, your mobile phone battery, your remote batteries. Okay, remote batteries. Battery contains power supply. It provides a power supply to the circuit, right? So this battery is a lithium 3 volts battery, give power supply to your BIOS chip. To the BIOS chip. Okay, continuous. The battery continuously provide power supply to your BIOS chip. So what are the temporary thing means BIOS chip is getting power supply even you shut down the system. Means it continuously run date and time. What are the settings you are given? What are the settings? There is some disturbance. I am getting lot of single number calls only since morning. Okay, sorry. Okay. So you given a BIOS password, you set a password, you change the settings, you change the boot priorities. Those settings will be like that only as long as the battery is connected. You shut down the system, you power on the system. What are the BIOS settings you have given, changed from the factory default? It will be like that only. Date and time run continuously. Okay, because of the battery power supply. In case this battery is removed, in case you remove the battery and reinsert the battery, what happen? BIOS settings will again go back to the factory default. What are the default settings are there? That will be loaded. What are the settings you have changed? That will be removed and it go to the factory default. So that's the simple point. Next, last one in this part. Okay, in the ROM. Okay. Then I will take just 5 minutes and we'll complete this motherboard and assemblies. Yeah. 1 second, just mind. Okay. You power on the system. On the screen, it is showing CMOS checksum bad or error. Okay. CMOS checksum bad or error. If power on the system, it is showing CMOS checksum error or bad. So what is the reason? The battery has low power or no power. Means, so continuously every day. For example, you start a system today and you got CMOS checksum error, CMOS checksum bad. You go to the BIOS setting, you change the settings as earlier, and you change the settings and you work completed, you shut down the system. Next day you turn on the system, again you are getting CMOS checksum bad or error. Possible the CMOS battery, no power, low power. So change the battery. That's it. Change the battery, change the settings, the issue will be resolved. That's it. Yeah, that's about your CMOS battery. Okay, understand guys about ROM, BIOS settings, CMOS battery. Okay, 3 components we discussed: CPU, RAM, and BIOS. 3 issues also we discussed. CPU is getting overheated, system restart itself. RAM loose connection, RAM not working, dust formation on the RAM edges. Then it is caused post failure, means you got a blank screen or a black screen. CMOS battery, low power, no power. Okay, it reset your BIOS settings to the factory default and shows CMOS checksum error or bad. That's it. Okay, just take 5 minutes. Then we'll discuss about motherboard and SMPS. Then we close. So we'll discuss this hard disk, SSD, and storages tomorrow. Okay, so just 5 minutes break.